No,
Okay,
no,
great.
that's right, no. I guess if things get rough, I have a guest room.
If the sisters
Yours
don't
working
get along
sometimes?
now,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to turn it
Oh,
on.
okay, good, you, yeah, that's true, you'll probably be okay. That's good. That's weird. Here. Test, test.
Testing.
Is it working? It is, it's on?
His is.
Okay, test, test. Okay. I don't know how to make them louder.
There you go.
All right.
You just hold the button.
Test, test, is that, can you hear it? Can you hear me? No.
Here, this one's on.
We might have to share. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fairview Village Republican Forum. Thank you for coming today. So, John, come on up. So, today we have a real treat. So, John, this is John Jay. Come on up here. So, John and I are running for the Charter Review Commission. And since it would be hard for me to ask questions and answer questions, I've asked Rob Anderson to come and be our moderator for the morning. And as usual, please be patient with our sound system. It's always glitchy. Okay? All right. And with that, I'll let you, Rob.
Yeah. So, all right, here you go. Here's that other mic. I think the batteries might be low on that. It was wanting to come out. So, yeah, I wanted to go ahead and just, I'm gonna actually ask just a series of questions that's related to the charter. Now, how many of you know, Eileen, you don't raise your hand for this one. You are disqualified from answering this question. But how many of you know what the county charter is? All right, yeah, some hands there. All right, Eileen, I'm just picking on you a little bit. So maybe, in fact, I thought it would be kind of good for you. So we have Jill Ross, obviously, we have John Jay,
Chair technical.
and maybe one of you want to just kind of jump in and ask the first question, and maybe the other one can kind of fill in some of the gaps or whatever. But what is the Charter Review Commission? So maybe if you want to start with that. Now, I know that John, he's written a couple of articles in Clark County Today. So I'm going to start with John on this one, and then Jill can just jump in maybe on some issues that, because it's a big question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question being, what is the County Charter Review Commission?
Put it right here.
Now, is this working?
Yep, perfect.
Every 5 years in Clark County, after we adopted our at-home charter review, or charter in the county, it's an opportunity for us to elect 3 members from each of the county council districts, 15 total. We have 5 county council districts of a 15-member board that has the ability and the power to recommend new amendments to our county charter, which was adopted as part of the Home Rule Charter in 2014, to make amendments. And then those amendments don't go to the county council, they actually go directly to the citizens, the voters of Clark County, to vote on to make these amendments.
Yes, so one of our jobs is so what we do, we review the charter. We review it to see if there's things that need to be changed, added, that more reflect the needs or wants of the people. So one of the things we do is we spend a lot of time asking people what their concerns are. So one of the things I've done as I've been speaking to people is, I say, well, okay, we can't cure cancer, okay, but there are a lot of things that we can do. So one of the things I've done is on your chairs, I have a little white card, and one of the things is your concerns. So what we will be doing is we'll be bringing those concerns when we begin to review it and see if there's things that we can do. Of course, we are limited by the Constitution and state law, but we will definitely be presenting those to see, what we can do.
Awesome. So if you don't know, everyone, or most everyone, knows that we have a U.S. Constitution. We have a Washington State Constitution. And what John alluded to is in 2014, the county voted to have in a way, a county constitution, or the Home Rule Charter, which there's only 7 counties in Washington that have this home rule charter. So all the other counties have, and what Clark County used to be, is your typical like 3 commissioners, and everything is really guided and stipulated by the Washington State Constitution. But in a home rule charter situation, which does allow for a little more autonomy in the county, still under the guidelines of the Washington State Constitution, it allows a little more liberty for how these home rule charters counties can operate. So, as John said, in 2014, a county charter was adopted and implemented in 2015. And so those are the things a lot of people don't realize, like, oh, why is this so important? Well, it's important because really it's the charter that shapes many of the other elected officials. It shapes, from county manager and what county councilors can do before county commissioners. For example, if you had an issue right here and you just, you couldn't get through to the county or you weren't getting results, you used to be able to call your county commissioner and they could, go down to the office or they could help advocate for that. I believe it's a little bit of a, there's pros and cons, but I think one of the cons is with the counselor position now. It's very limited, and it's, it restricts the abilities. For example, county counselors only have authority over taxation, over land use, and then on public health, the Board of Health board, and then the budget. And so, some people didn't like that county commissioners could go in and advocate for citizens on issues in county government. And so this firewall that was created, I think it holds back. The legislative branch, which is the county councilors, is the people's branch. And it limited the people's ability to access government. That's just a little bit of an opinion on my part.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the county organization. So what the charter does is it basically says who's elected, who's appointed, length of terms, things like that. And so what Rob is alluding to is this is the Clark County, Washington organizational chart. So the top line are the people who are elected, okay? So you have your county council up here, you have the assessor, auditor, clerk, district court judges, prosecuting attorney, the sheriff, superior court judge, and the treasurer. And then down here in the middle is kind of like the gatekeeper. This is the county managers. They are hired and appointed by these folks up here. Down here, these are all of the, what would you call them, subcommittees that the county manager then manages. Now, one of the things we did, I think, at the last election, so you see, so everything that they do, if they have anything they want to talk about, share, or have concerns, it has to go through the county manager, okay? So she's kind of like the gatekeeper to this level, okay? So when I was going through the charter, one of the first things I noticed was here's the sheriff up here, and here's the jail down here, okay? So I just visited Sheriff Horch yesterday, so his office is in the lower level of the jail, but he has to go through the county manager to talk to the
Jail services.
the jail services upstairs, and that's David Shook. So, but that was that we passed that by a law last election, isn't that correct?
No, actually, it was just a county council
Okay.
decision
That was
in
a
which
decision.
they removed the jail services from the
I
sheriff.
remember that
Yeah.
happened in the last go around. Yeah. So anyway.
So yeah, that highlights one of those issues of, I understand that some were like, hey, we wanted this firewall, but then it created this very extreme situation where, really it limits the people's ability to have access to their own government. So,
Can I jump in and just
Yeah.
illustrate a quick point on the imbalance, I think, between the county council being the legislative branch? But if you read our U.S. Constitution, in Section 1, Article 1, it begins with sort of what we establish as our American tradition of what a legislative body should do. And it says, all legislative power herein shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. But if you look at the section in which, Section 2.1, of which our county charter describes the legislature, it says, all power not delegated to the executive and to the people, all legislative power not delegated to those two, are delegated to the county council, which to me pops up as something being very different than what we would expect from a legislative branch, especially considering that we've never actually had a citizen-led initiative by signature since we've adopted home rule. So all legislative power here, and that's not granted effectively to the executive branch as opposed to the people, because the people haven't been able to exercise that power as of yet.
yeah. So let's talk about why you are running. So Jill, why don't you start? I think John started last time. Why are you running for Charter Review Commission?
Okay, I'm running for charter review mainly for my children and their children. So I've lived here since 1986, and when my husband and I moved here, it was a safe place to live, it was affordable, it was a wonderful place to raise your children. And over time, it has become less safe, less affordable, and I want to, my daughter is here today, so I want this to continue to be the place that it was when I came here, when it was affordable and safe. So those are two of the things that I'm really concerned about. Yeah. Oh.
What would make you think that it's less safe now?
Crime. Yeah, so yes, definitely, there's a lot more crime. In our little neighborhood here, we've had many break-ins, thefts. We've had people accosted and bothered. So yes, definitely the crime rate has gone up. Another thing that's definitely changed is our police per capita is very, very low. We are the lowest in the nation for police per capita, and then our sheriff is the lowest per capita in the county. So anyway, I'll pull up that statistic in a minute too. So that's another concern of mine.
So John, why are you running for county charter?
Yeah, we used to be a nation that could solve problems, that can actually, we could build bridges, we could build enough houses for people to live in our community, and now we've been stymied by this inability to make decisions. And so I see the county charter as an opportunity to sort of adjust how decisions are made so we can have bodies both elected and appointed that are able to make decisions for the betterment of our community, to make sure more public safety, to make sure that our cost of living can be at least kept to a reasonable level. All sorts of problems that I think that obviously the county charter might not be able to solve all of them, but it can set the rules of which these decisions are made, and hopefully we can work towards that more perfect union so we can effectively make the decisions and get people in office that can help solve some of these big problems that we're facing.
Here's that statistic I was talking about. So right down here is the county sheriff's staffing. So here you have the national average staffing per capita, and all the way down here is our sheriff. Wow. So like I said, I just visited John Horch yesterday, and he was talking about the fact that if you have 5 calls, come up, and he only has 3 officers, he cannot handle all of those needs. He's way too understaffed.
Yeah. So why don't you go into a little more on your background, and John, we'll start with you, so tell us a little more about you personally, why you think you're prepared for something like this. Oh, and while you're thinking about that, let me just kind of tell you real quick, and we'll get to questions in just a little bit, but if you didn't hear or not, so the Charter Review Commission, it's not a paid position. There's no, they're not doing it for the cash, all right? I can just tell you that. Wow. And then also it's a 2-year term, but yet I believe it was changed with an amendment that it could continue on though as needed, I believe. But generally, it's a 2-year term in which they review and put forward these amendments that they feel like, needs to be addressed in the charter. So John, why don't you tell us a little more about you?
Yeah, I'm extremely active in the community. I've worn several hats. I used to be a member of the Parks Advisory Board for the county. Last year, I ran for county council, which is when I initially became exposed to more of the nuances of the county charter and sort of became increasingly aware of the fact how many groups of people, both Democrats, Republicans, environmentalists, developers, who are all unhappy with the decisions that are being made by our county. It's a shared effect across the political spectrum. But also, I'm a member of the Vancouver Planning Commission, as well as several other hats. I'm sure maybe many of you have seen me around town giving different talks on different things, but I am a big believer in being involved in our democratic process. I was just speaking to some folks beforehand about sort of the complexities of federal government, but I think we as citizens have an opportunity to really make an impact at the local level, so that's largely what motivates me to be involved in.
Okay, so did you want me to just talk a little bit more about my background?
Yes, just
Okay.
you.
Okay, so I grew up south of Oregon City, out in the country, a place called Beaver Creek. Does anybody know where Beaver Creek is? Nobody knows where Beaver Creek is. Oh, I got a couple people know. Okay, but way out in the country. And then after I got married, spent 3 years up in Alaska. Was a flight attendant up there. That was a lot of fun. And I also worked for Horace Mann Insurance up there. And then we moved down here, and we chose Clark County again because it was just a wonderful place to raise children. It was affordable. Even though my family was down Salem and his family was north, we chose Clark County, and it was a wonderful place to raise children. So when I first got here, I was working for State Farm Insurance. And then when the children arrived, I have 2 daughters, my daughter Sarah and another daughter Anna. I decided to stay home, and I homeschooled my girls through 8th, 9th grade. When you're a homeschooler, you never really know what grade your child's in. So you just, let them learn at their own pace. And then, probably about 2000, so when they'd gone off to high school, they went to Prairie High. And I had a back injury, ended up having to have surgery, and was having a really hard time with rehab, and discovered Tai Chi, very unusual. And so Tai Chi really helped me recover from my surgery, my back injury, and so I became a Tai Chi instructor. So ever since 2010, I have been teaching Tai Chi. It's mainly to seniors. It's for health, it's for balance, things like that. So I've taught at Glenwood Senior Living, at the Quarry. I teach here. I teach Gentle Stretch here. I teach Cascade Athletic Club, Furstenberg. I've taught at many different places. After COVID, I cut way back, and I only teach here and Cascade Athletic Club and at Furstenberg.
Are we going to do Tai Chi later?
Sure, and
later on?
afterwards, stick around. We'll have class. Yes. So I've been working, mainly, it's like I said, it's mainly for health. I've had people from, young people. My oldest student was 101.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I've worked with people with Parkinson's. And also, I was invited to come to a physical therapist seminar, and they wanted to see what I did, and now I actually get referrals from physical therapists, because it's just a very helpful thing. So when did I decide to get more involved in politics, I guess you'd say? It was probably, I don't know, it was probably around 2020, 2021, and I realized, no, it was before that. I realized I really needed to be more informed. I really didn't know a lot of the issues, and so I really jumped in and started educating myself and getting involved. So I'm a PCO here, and I run the Republican Forum here. And so every month we have different speakers and topics, and we try to just keep the people of our neighborhood informed.
Wonderful. I saw a couple hands, so we'll start here if you have a question.
Jill, I do understand what you're saying about the sheriff's level of support, but that's not really, the charter is not involved in that. So I would like to ask you specifically, what proposed changes would you like to make to the charter itself?
Yes, that's a very good question. So it would be in budgeting. So it'd be prioritizing the budget. One of the things I did recently was I looked through the Clark County budget, and there are a lot of other things prioritized before. So you can actually put into the budget that they need to prioritize staffing per capita.
Yeah,
Where
very-
in the charter would you put that?
Yeah, in the Washington State Constitution, there is precedent for this, similar to education, where it says that the paramount duty of the state of Washington is to provide education, and that has been used as both by the courts to increase the funding for education without actually, being the state legislature requiring that. That is in our constitution for our state, and so we can apply a similar logic to our county, which, as opposed to education, because county governments don't really have too much of an involvement in education, therefore, we could put a prioritization as an amendment to make staffing and fully providing the resources for our law enforcement and sheriff's department in the county charter to make sure that that's the highest priority when allocating a budget.
I was wondering why the two of you are up there. Are you running against Jill?
No. Okay. Okay, let me quickly explain. So there are so what we do for the commission is you elect 3 people for each district. There's 5 districts, so that means there's gonna be 15 people elected. So I'm running for position 1. Janet Landisberg, right there, she's running for position 2, and John Jay is running for position 3. So we're not running against each other. So I am running against Ben. Hi, Ben. Ben's right there. Yes, and John, you're running against someone named Henry. And he's not here.
I
Yes.
don't think so.
Did
Very good.
that make sense?
But they will arm wrestle later.
Yeah.
You spoke a lot about the charter. Could you tell us 3 things that you could propose that could go into the charter, and also some things that you can't put into the charter?
Things that we can put in the charter, previously mentioned public safety amendment. We could also, charter, we could also increase the threshold for, from a 3 to a 4 vote to raise property taxes. That's something that we can put in the charter. We could also require a balanced budget in the charter as well. Things that we couldn't put in the charter would be, very specific policy areas that would usurp the powers of the county council or the sheriffs, or the different executive bodies as well. So we couldn't say that you had to give $10 million to the sheriff's department in that next fiscal year in the charter. That would be not a good use of it. It has to be more in perpetuity, something that can last longer than a direct policy decision, if that makes sense. That we want to make sure that our elected officials have the capacity to make.
One of the things I've done, and I'm sure John has done this too, now John is able to keep all this information in his head. I have to keep it in a binder. So I have printed off all of the other charters except for Pierce County. So we've got Clallam, Clark, and King, Pierce, Snohomish, San Juan, and Whatcom. And I haven't printed off Pierce's because there's 85 pages long, and I'm not going to print off 85 pages. But if it's in their charters, then yeah, we could do it. So several of them have balanced budget requirements in there. So that's something that we can do because it's in other ones. Something, we can't do, so like in the initiative and referendum section, there's limitations. We may not, so let's see, the following are limited by state or federal law. Ordinance providing for compensation or working conditions of county employees, redistricting county districts, authorizing repealing an appropriation of money, authorizing repealing taxes or fees, authorizing or repealing any provision of service or program, or amending an initiative can't amend or repeal a charter. So there are limitations listed in here. But on the initiative referendum, we could lower the number of signatures required and increase the number of days signatures can be collected. So making that a little bit easier for people, because initiatives, referendums, and mini initiatives are a way for the people to speak back into your local government.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize the county requirements for initiatives is actually higher than the state's. So the state has an 8%, and for whatever reason, they put a 10%, and then also a smaller time window. So just think about that, where you have to get more signatures and you have less time than typically what's given on the state level, which is a kind of a sneaky way, because the Washington State Constitution, sorry, you hit a nerve here for me. I happen to be the only person who successfully led for a mini initiative, and also the other person that voted for it was sitting right here. But it is extremely difficult kind of situation, and those requirements there really limit the people's ability to speak to government directly. And the Washington State Constitution says that the powers of initiative cannot be, limited in any way, but they do it on the front end by changing and making the requirements harder. So it's kind of a sneaky way. Eileen, I saw your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Okay.
Thank you. What are your viewpoints on ranked choice voting, number one, and that could be addressed in the charter. And I just want to remind the people that anything in this chart, any of these amendments in the charter have to go to the people.
Yeah.
Even though these are elected individuals who are going to be serving on the charter review, this still all goes to the people to vote on. So you still would have an opportunity. So ranked choice voting. If you're for it, why? If you are not for it, why? Thank you.
You want me to explain ranked choice voting? I don't think I can, and many people can't.
Okay, here, John.
It's very complex, but maybe John will give it
I'll
a.
try my best. So with ranked choice voting, you have your list of candidates, and you have the ability to choose, this is my first choice candidate, this is my second choice candidate, this is my third choice candidate, and then they go through, they look at the least person to get the least amount of first choice votes, they knock them out, and then they reassign their second choice numbers to that candidate, those totals, and then they kind of keep going until they get down to 2 or 1, depending on if it's a primary or general election. But I am personally opposed.
Just back up 1 second, because I want to make something real clear with ranked choice voting. Sorry to interject, but if on the very first ballot, if somebody gets the requisite 50.1%, then
That's
that's
right.
the end
That's
of
the
the
end of
voting
it.
at that point.
That's the end
So
of it.
that doesn't change. So
Sure, I
I want to make
appreciate
sure
that.
that's clear.
Yeah, you would win by already having those
people
one
on the
votes.
ballot,
Exactly.
nobody gets 51% usually.
Okay, thank you from the opposition over there.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate
Not
that.
opposition.
So go ahead, just
I'm not running against that.
raise your hand next time, and I'll call
So
on you.
wait, let John
All right, so
finish.
let John
Go ahead,
finish.
John.
Now, I am opposed to ranked choice voting. I believe that our current system of single member past the post has successfully elected progressives, it's successfully elected conservatives, it's successfully elected moderates. I think people understand it, they know how it works, it's a simple system. Whoever gets the most votes wins. I think the argument that ranked choice voting produces more moderate candidates has been proven wrong, especially with reference to New York. As of this last election cycle, I think it's complicated. I think we already have a lack of faith in our election system for a variety of reasons, and I don't want to add any more doubt to our election process when we already have a system that's been in place for a long time that has successfully elected folks across the spectrum, and we know it does because we've seen it proven time and time again, election cycle after election cycle.
What he said. So yes, I'm definitely against it. It makes things way more complicated. So Pierce County tried it, and they tried it one go-round, and the next time they voted it out. So the first time they voted it in, they voted it in by just a little over 50%. The next time they were able to vote on it, they voted it out 70-30. So it's very complicated. I mean, it already takes us weeks to count our ballots because of in mail-in ballots, people forget to, so as a PCO, when people forget to sign the back of their envelope or their signatures don't match, we have so many ballots that have to be what's called cured, and sometimes people don't even bother to do that. So it's already complicated enough. It already takes us weeks to decide to count or recount if necessary. So also from a little bit of research I've done, it makes it 35% more expensive. So, no, I am definitely against ranked choice voting. What was your other, did you have another question there, Eileen?
No, but I can think of one.
I bet you can. So, and by the way, this is an issue that was already put forward by the last
Yes, yeah, it was
Charter
already voted down the
Review
last
Commission,
time. Yeah.
and it was solidly voted down
Yeah.
here in Clark County. So it's not just, you know, in theory, it's also an issue that is not popular here in Clark County, just from the data perspective on that.
Yeah, another place that, Alaska, they have it there, and the people really are, so it just narrowly got passed again, so they made an initiative to repeal it, and the opposition to keep it outspent them 100-1.
Wow.
So the people really didn't want it, but the special interests did, and they just poured money into that state to keep it. So, you know, I lived in Alaska for a few years, and so it's not popular.
Another thing too that is I don't know about you, but do you remember the days when you used to get like election results that night?
And remember those days, people?
That was you know, not that long ago.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with ranked choice voting too, it could take weeks sometimes for that whole process to kind of come forward. So since we're on this topic of what was presented last time in the review charter review commission, what are your thoughts on, you know, overall the last charter review amendments? So there was, I believe there was about 18. If you just look at, I could be wrong on that number, there's quite a few that came forward. I have a list of them here, but any thoughts on the last go round, the last charter review commission and the amendments that they put forward?
It's clear to me with the last go-round of the charter review, we'll call them round one, I guess, of the 2020 to 2022 Charter Review Commission, is that the amendments that they put forward that were the most nonpartisan, most articulated to independent voters, including the nonpartisanship for candidates for the county council, as well as for the executive offices, which could be argued take away information from voters by not giving them the partisanship, but it is something that is appealing to a lot of a lot of independents, which is actually the plurality of our electorate here in Clark County. There's more people who are declined to state than there are of either party. And so it's something that like that appeals more to a broader base than say when they, in the second year, they became more partisan with their ranked choice voting proposal, as well as in a second attempt at the DEI initiative to have a new commission for DEI, which went from losing by 7 points to like 15 points. So when they proposed ideas that had more of a general common appeal, they were more successful in their first year. Second year, when they became a bit more partisan in their approaches, they had more pushback.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Personally, you know, one of the things I've asked people, when I've been talking to people, why you don't vote, and they're like, well, I don't know who to vote for. I'm an R or I'm a D, you know, and I don't know these people, you know, so they just don't vote. So I'm kind of on the fence on that one because I can understand. Another thing I hear a lot is, well, I don't like all the partisanship. I don't like all the fighting, you know. I want to be, so people are more moderate. So I'm kind of on the fence on that one. And then I agree with the other ones. I think the average people want something what can we agree on? And those are the things that did pass.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I think on the nonpartisan, it tapped into something, you know, you never like to see your kids fight, right? I mean, so it kind of tapped in that desire of saying, hey, maybe if we put nonpartisan labels on these positions, it will take the rancor out of politics. Newsflash, changing the label doesn't take, they're elected, they're political positions, so there's always going to be politics involved in elected positions. Unfortunately, like Jill said, but it's removed a lot of information where voters then look at these nonpartisan candidates and say, so what do you really believe? And it can, not to say that all are that way, but it can create a lot of confusion. Now, we are seeing and continue to see extremely low turnout it's continuing to drop year after year where we're seeing very low turnout. Is it connected to that? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one to fully connect, but we have seen voter, participation drop, and we do see we're nonpartisans, where there's not as much information about where candidates really stand on these positions. So it's kind of interesting. Jill, were you?
Well, it already, this particular job, the charter review, is already difficult because people are like, what's that? And then they're gonna get their voters pamphlet, and there's, 15 people need to be elected, but there are several people running for every one of those positions, and so there's just all this, slew of candidates that they don't know, and so they don't know what it is, they don't know who these people are, so you have a lot less voter participation, so.
Yeah, any other questions right now? We'll maybe grab a couple before we jump into some of my other, I'm gonna grab yours and I'll come to you.
Hi, Jenny Griffiths. I've lived in Vancouver now for about 11 years, and I'm concerned of all the ruts in the road. I don't see any improvement in that. Is there any way you can address that?
Especially around here where this would be a city government thing. So, especially around here, I'd be, with potholes. I would be curious to see what could be done on infrastructure in terms of the charter, but nothing that I'm aware of, but my best guess.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything like that in other charters because streets and roads and things are usually taken care of by your cities or states and things like that. We have county roads too.
Yeah, we have
So we have county roads, so,
The charter cannot do it.
but the charter can't do it. So, and this gal, she knows what she's talking about.
It doesn't have anything to do with the budget then? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does, but I don't think that's something you can do in the charter. But, one of the things I'm gonna tell you is when I started doing this, so I didn't know I was going to be running until filing week, so I've been doing a lot of catch up. And so people would ask me things like that, I don't think the charter can do that. And then I'll go and find out the charter can. So what I tell people is go ahead and write down your concerns on there, and then, like I said, we'll bring them, and then there might be surprised that there's something we can do, but that particular one, I don't think that can be done in the charter.
However, even though, for example, potholes or
Yeah.
speed bumps or
Yeah.
whatever kind of road issues, those can be specifically addressed in the charter. However, back in the day, you could call up your county commissioner and, you could maybe have direct access to the Public Works Department and maybe get results that might be quicker than what we have now. So there could be some ways potentially to improve how grievances or issues that citizens have and how they can get resolved. So that could possibly.
And we do have the petition and initiative option.
Right. So, and I do know, just to kind of hit on that, for example, some charters, home rule charters, do have auditing powers granted to the counselors. They have, I believe that there's maybe one or two who have subpoena powers as well.
They do.
Yeah. And so anyways, so if an issue came up, they could have more investigative powers, not to say that they might do that over potholes, but maybe they should.
Yeah.
All right, I saw another hand up. I'm gonna come to you in just a second.
I do have a question, but first I need to defend the people that you're talking about. I don't identify with any political party at all,
great.
and I have absolutely no trouble finding out who to vote for.
Wonderful.
There are
Good.
a lot of resources available. But my specific question is, do you believe the county manager position should be an elected one?
Well, that is again something that I did. I'm going to tell you my personal opinion. No, I think that so I talked with John Horch about this, and then when I researched all the other, I don't. Maybe you and I disagree on this. So when the county executive is elected, it's kind of like they become the president. And they can veto things that the county council passes. So right now, the county manager is hired and can be and is hired by the council and the other elected. So they are an employee. So I kind of like that level of accountability. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
You have a different opinion, John? Maybe we don't
Other
agree on this, I don't
executives
know.
get to speak into and give input on the hiring. I'm not so sure if it's the firing as well, but I believe it's the hiring. They added this as an amendment, charter amendment, yeah.
Yeah.
This was one of their priorities last time, where they added the ability for the executive electeds to be able to give input regarding the hiring of the county manager. So, John.
Yeah, I'm not permanently opposed to a elected executive, but at this moment, what I see is one of the biggest problems with the county charter is the weakness of the legislative branch.
Yeah.
I would like to strengthen the legislative branch first and foremost, and maybe in another future sessions of county charter reviews, they can consider this issue. I imagine it will always be considered so long and reverse considered once it's actually put in place to go back to a county manager. But given that one of my goals is to make sure that our elected county council has more legislative power, whether that be their own staff or anything like that, or having more authority to initiate their own investigations, to reach out to departments and things like that. So my goal is there. But once we have an elected, as Joe was mentioning about having our own president, that means that rather than working for the council, the elected executive would have their own prerogative. They have their own constituency to answer to that is not the county council, but rather all of us. And so they might make decisions that are different from the county council and have their own power, which is, right now, there's already some difficulties in working with the county council and dictating what to do with not dictating, but sort of working with the other elected executives because they have their own sort of sway because they're their own electeds. So right now, I want to make the legislative more powerful. We can redress the executive once we tip the balance too far if we do that, but I'm trying not to.
And remember, the legislative branch, the counselors, is the people's branch.
Right.
That's
Right.
your branch
Right.
in which you get to speak into. Sometimes it's been vilified by just targeting a specific counselor or, like this, or vilify that person. But really, when they do that, they're really weakening the people's voice in that, to be able to have that voice. So that's really important. You had a question.
I was wondering I understand what the charter works and it's for the county and everything, what keeps the conflicts between what the charter might say and what a city like Vancouver might say or Camas might say as opposed to the county supervisors?
So are you talking about conflicts between like the charter and then city charters or
Yep.
bylaws?
So which one supersedes the other?
Yep.
They don't necessarily supersede each other. They have just different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And if there's any conflict between city and county or state or federal governments, they can sue each other. They do that sometimes.
They do that sometimes.
Yeah, so I wanted to read a little bit about the manager position in the charter. It says the county manager shall be selected on basis of their executive experience and professional administrative qualifications. The council shall consult with the assessor, auditor, clerk, prosecuting attorney, sheriff, and treasurer prior to making the appointment. And then it says here, the county manager shall serve at will. So, at this point, I kind of like the idea of them being an employee. I would like to see better communication, because right now, there's kind of that choke point where the legislative branch or the executive branch, legislative branch can't really speak down into those, you saw that organizational chart. So I would like to see some better communication. That's one of the things when I spoke to somebody on the council, they're very frustrated because everything has to go through that manager to talk to anybody, so there's a, right here, it says the council members shall not interfere. And it doesn't really make for good communication. So that'd be something. Whatcom County has a couple of things that they've done to make that a little bit better. So there are other charters that have addressed that.
Yeah, and, you know, in other constitutions, either state or US constitutions, you see more checks and balances and shared powers,
Yeah.
things like that. And so this kind of interesting position of having this firewall and real strict limitations on it. I mean, again, not to say that there's some importance there, but it just seems like, in my opinion, maybe it went a little bit too far in that, and maybe some things, and that's really what the Charter Review Commission's all about, is remember, it's 15 people, and so they're gonna get together, they're gonna hash out, they're gonna talk about these issues, they're gonna try to find and resolve and put forward what they think and refine some of these ideas. So there's gonna be a lot of conversations about it and to kind of refine those. Is there any other kind of issues that you think, you know, because there could be issues that maybe the charter can't address, but maybe it's worth exploring and looking down. So are there any other kind of, I don't know if I'd say priorities, but maybe priorities and also kind of other issues, maybe potholes, right? Maybe we have a subcommittee on potholes, so go ahead.
I do believe that we can always improve our infrastructure and around the area. Nobody likes potholes, they're bad. But one of my biggest issues that I ran for county council on, and I am always advocating on, is home ownership. How do we get more people to own homes? How do we, I want more young people to be able to buy property. It keeps our grandkids nearby. It keeps families able to be started more effectively, gives them the stability that they need to have that, you know, property under their feet so they can kickstart off a family. These are what I largely advocate on the planning commission and in my county council run. So, but what can the charter do on that? And I think that by making it more difficult to raise property taxes from that 4-3 majority vote to a 4/5 vote would be a small step of the way of making sure that the cost of living is able to be retained at a reasonable level. That'll keep people in their homes, that'll make it harder, or it'll make it easier for people to be able to afford their mortgage by keeping these property taxes low. And I wouldn't want to necessarily even advise for this if it weren't for the amount of spending that's been coming out of Olympia recently. We've been hit with the largest tax increase in Washington state history in this last legislative cycle. We have to put an end to that, and I think that this is our chance to say that enough is enough and give sort of an example of how we can stand up to an excessive amount of taxation that eats into our cost of living into the state and prevents people from being able to buy a home and start a family.
Yes,
They should freeze property taxes for seniors, you know, back in like the 2021 level, or, you know, years ago, they should have froze seniors' property taxes.
well, these are definitely the things that are you know, up on priorities on my mind too. Like he said, the state passed the largest tax increase package in state history. It's huge, so everything is going to be hit. So those kind of things I would definitely like to see addressed. The balanced budget is one of those things that would address that. The county manager just proposed her budget, and it's already at a deficit. So
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, because some people might wonder, so Washington State already has a law requiring a balanced budget for counties. However, like good governments often do, is they figure out a workaround. And so right now, Clark County has a structural deficit, is what they call it. So even though they're state compliant with the law, because they have the money in the accounts, they have the ability to cover these things, but yet they are running a structural, what the county manager calls a structural deficit, and it's a pretty decent. I believe the last amount that I heard from Kathleen Otto was between $14 and $17 million right now, and so it's kind of a loophole. And so what Jill's referring to is potentially a structural deficit balanced budget requirement in there. So, and then hold on here. I'll come on over to you, Janet. See that? That's how we do it. We raise our hand and we.
So how do you fund more staff for the sheriff's office if you wanna like that and not have any kind of increase? You're limiting it to 4 people agreeing instead of 3. Limiting property tax increases. How else are you gonna find the money to pay for what you want to increase the staffing and the sheriff's office? And we really need to build the jail, and that's been deferred and deferred and deferred till it's way more expensive.
Yes, yes. I'm well aware of the complication. Yes, yeah, like I said, I reviewed the county budget and it's definitely very complicated. The only thing I would like to see the entire budget. I looked at her presentation, which is just big general numbers. But, we have to be able to tighten our belt. I know people hate the word cut, but, I think that has to be some cutting going on. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's obviously this is a decision that would be left up to the county council. Now we're going into the weeds, so it'd be out of the purview of the county charter review. But nevertheless, I think that there is a lot of redundancies in the county budget. There should be a prioritization of what is a county government supposed to do, and looking at what services we offer. And there are areas that I know that we can cut, and there are areas that we should prioritize as a county government. That's roads, transportation, that's public safety, and that's permitting and allowing for zoning laws and looking over those and making sure that our developers are keeping up to code and all that. But ultimately, it would be a decision made by the county council whether or not. But I want the county to prioritize. We can't do everything, and I'm tired of governments pretending like we can.
Does the county charter have any budget or authority to hire an independent auditor to audit the county budgets?
Yeah.
The reason I'm mentioning this is that some years ago I was on a grand jury in Kern County in California, and we did not do criminal cases. We went through each county department and we did an audit. And the county council was quite upset about this, and so they cut our funds off. So fortunately, 2 of the members of the grand jury were CPAs, and so we did our own in-house audits. I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting that the county council should have independent audits done on each department. Thank you.
That's interesting.
That's a great question,
That's
great
a great
point.
question.
And as I mentioned earlier, there are some other home rule charter counties that do have an auditor office in their council's office that they control to be able to do those kind of things. But you're suggesting more of an further independent. Outside.
Because we do have,
Because
we have
what
an
we
auditor.
discovered, and this was just in 1 year, we discovered that the library system, they were having, their executives were having meetings in Hawaii. Others were having meetings in the Bahamas.
Wow.
The county historical societies ran the museums and everything. They were meeting in Hawaii also, several times a year. So we put a little stop to that and saved quite a bit of money. And we found other things that were extremely secretive that you didn't know until you had an auditor look at them. Independent.
Yeah.
That's a great, and what would be great is for conversations like this on the charter review, in which maybe you explore and I'm sure, issues that are kind of looked around. I just also wanted to introduce, I see that Liz Klein is here and she is running, she's not in District 3, she's in District 4 and running for position 1, correct?
I am.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, so any other questions? So let's see, are we wrapping up at?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So why don't we just spend those 5 minutes in asking, how can they find out more about your campaign? Maybe talk specifically about that or how to support your campaign. And yeah, just kind of any closing statements if you want.
Okay, well, on your seats, you have a couple things from me. One of them is an envelope if you wanted to do a donation. I also have that little white slip of paper. So if you wanted a yard sign or something like that, I have yard signs in the back. So you can go to my website, which is electjillross.com. I'm also on Facebook. And then I have my cards here. I think that's about it.
And as she's handing over the mic, so this is a position that there's no primary, so you won't see it on your ballots in August. It is in November only, so it's just November ballot, so don't call Jill when you open up your August primary and she's not on there. It's not a conspiracy. There's no one, it's in November. It's coming in November, so John.
Yeah, that's a totally different timeline for an election to have it in August, have no primary. One way you get to me is www.electjohnj.com. I also have Facebook under Elect John Jay. I have a donation portal there as well. Or you can write a check to John Jay for County Count. Sorry, bad habits. John Jay for Charter Review, and I'd be happy to accept any volunteers or reach out to me, fill out my volunteer form on my website. I will be doing a blitz at door knocking come right after Labor Day. I plan on hitting thousands of doors, just as I did last summer for the county council. I love knocking doors and meeting people, and I love it when people are able to join me, or any other way you can volunteer. I can happily find a place for you, and I appreciate any help or support.
So supporting, so donate, either volunteer or, be an influencer, spread the word. Or maybe some of you, if you like to kind of have entertain or have a little party at your house or something like that, gather your neighbors and friends and invite them over and have a conversation maybe like this, maybe without the mics. I don't know if I'd be available. Maybe I'd come.
Yes,
I
I would
don't know,
definitely,
maybe fun.
I'm sure John would too, be more than happy to come on over and sit down with you and your friends and answer questions and hear your concerns. Like I said, I've been telling people, I want to hear what you are concerned about. Those are the things, those are the issues that we're going to be discussing. So if there's something we didn't talk about today, write it down and let me know.
Well, that concludes my part. If you want to have a closing part of just a closing comment or,
Ask real quick, how
do you
know which seat you're gonna vote on?
oh, it's in which position? So each district, this is District 3, each district has 3 positions to vote on. So you will only be elected in 3.
Is it by zip code?
Our district, D3, goes from about 205 to 192nd and about 4th Plain to the river.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if you live in that area, then
If you live around here,
Yeah.
you live around, I'm assuming you do,
Yeah.
so you're in District
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
So you're gonna see choices for position 1, I believe it's, so it's Ben, it's Jill, and then another fella.
Can't remember his name.
Michael, I think Michael is his name.
Not important.
Yeah, not important, that's right.
Exactly.
And then position 2, so you have Janet, you have the Janets, all right? So it's kind of interesting. And then position 3, you have John and Henry?
Yeah.
Henry. So those are your gonna be choices, and you're just gonna be voting for 3.
Yeah.
Position 1, position 2, position 3. So hopefully that it is probably the most complicated thing in the county that you're gonna have to deal with, and but it's important. Hopefully from this conversation today, you kind of see how important it is, because it's really the charter that shapes a lot of these different kind of conversations and priorities, and they're great discussions, even though there's maybe disagreement or, other sides. It's a great process in which you can kind of work out those and refine those and put those kind of things forward. All right, any last? Okay, excellent. So Jill, it's all you.
Okay, well, thank you for coming today. If you have any other questions, stick around. I'll be at the back table there if you want some signs or any other literature. And John?
I want to thank you all for your questions, and I want to thank Rob for facilitating this, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day to talk about the charter. I know that's always the most thing, but it is extremely important, and I appreciate all of you for recognizing that as well. So thank you all.
Just counting for everything.
They should address that first. Me too, absolutely.
100%. Oh, yeah.
Hi, Marilyn.
So I'm not in this district, but I would
You're in
put
my
up,
district.
I'm yours, so I would put up one of your signs.